Okay, it is about a little 8:30, a little over after 8:30, about 8:34 p.m. And it is Wednesday, December the 9th, week number five. Number five. That means we have one more to go that this course will be over on next Wednesday, the 16th. That'll be our final lecture. And then the course ends 2 days later. So I will be talking about today your assignments for week number 6, even though I'll talk to them about them next week as well, since we be near the end of the course. So let's go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay, let's move that one up. Okay, hope you had a chance to check out that video. And here you are. You see weeks 1 to 4 are down here. Week 5 will be down here as well. Okay. Hopefully next week there'll be more people coming because the course ends on 2 days later. All right, so let's take a look at the course calendar. Here we are. Today is the 9th. We had our reading assignment that I gave you, chapter 9. I sent you the PowerPoints. Read sections, the drug addiction, public health perspective, and then check out that video, Chasing the Dragon, Indicators of Use Activity. Each are located in the Blackboard classroom. Okay. And your initial post was due last night, incarceration or treatment. Your reply post, incarceration or treatment, is due Saturday. Your written assignment, recidivism and public health. We're going to talk about that. And then your quiz, your timed quiz. Okay, those are due the 13th, this Sunday. Okay, so now let's take a look at, and then you see the course ends the 18th. Our last lecture will be the 16th at 8:30 p.m. So let's look at the module. Again, I remind you to utilize the drugs and crime course. I reminded you that during the course of this whole quarter. So the discussion assignment, incarceration or treatment. And so you're going to read these facts. And then for your first post, identify and discuss an alternative you believe is better or more effective option to incarcerating persons for drug-related offenses, discussing both the pros and the cons, um, and the effectiveness and the option of reducing recidivism, and the impact of drug cases on the criminal justice system. I've kind of talked about that most of this quarter. Okay, identify factors deciding whether a person should be incarcerated or referred treatment or some other type of diversion program. And discuss the funding. In the reply post, respond to a student who has an alternative to incarceration. Okay. And recidivism and public health. So again, Dave The assignment involving Dave will be used for that written assignment. And then you're going to address the following drug enforcement policies on recidivism, discuss the probability of Dave reoffending, explain the long-term impact of drug enforcement to public health, discuss how drug enforcement policies are impacting recidivism rates, and provide an effective approach to reduce recidivism rates. Provide an explanation of how this approach would be effective for Dave. It's going to provide at least one credible source. As I said before, the more the better. APA formatted. If you don't have a credible source, you're going to have trouble getting a high grade. It's going to be a 2 to 3 page paper. So if it's APA formatted, that's going to be Roman 12 font. But some people have been using bigger fonts, and I've already warned some of you smaller fonts. But remember one thing is that your margins are supposed to be, I believe it's at least an inch, but not beyond that. And then your page should be double spaced with paragraphs as well. Make sure you run your papers through Grammarly. Okay, and then take a look at the rubric. As I always say, you always look at the far right. Forget these even exist. Unfortunately, several of you have not paid attention to that because you haven't satisfied the requirements for your papers. Drug enforcement policies for a total of 14 points. Description of drug enforcement policies on recidivism with thorough supporting details. You know what that means? Make sure you have credible sources, citations on the probability of Dave reoffending. Make sure you cover that. The impact to the public health, information literacy. Explanation of the long-term impact of drug enforcement policies to public health with supporting details from credible sources. Discuss how the current drug policies are impacting recidivism with an example of an effective approach to reduce recidivism rates and thorough explanation of how this approach would be effective for Dave. Credible sources cited in APA format, and then of course your 2 to 3 pages as well. Any questions about this assignment? Okay. All right, so you know it's due on Sunday. Okay, and actually I've given you some information during the course of this class to help you with this assignment. Then you have your quiz. That's time for 30 minutes. And then you have one opportunity, and you know the academic misconduct policy and so forth. And your live classroom lecture phrase, that's going to be due on Sunday as well. Okay. So now let's get into the module. One of the things, so we're going to deal with drug addiction, public health perspective. I'm not going to do the video chasing the dragon today because it doesn't come out very well in the recording, but I do encourage you to look at that video, indicators of use policy. So we're going to talk about those things that are issues from the public health perspective right now. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about this video, but I'm not going to show it. I do highly recommend looking at the video. It is a very detailed video. It gives a lot of good information. So, as you already know, that we are at a epidemic level, and that with the heroin and opioids, and just recently CNN with Lisa Lang, she did specials on Sunday nights. She did a special on opioid addiction. I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at it. You may be able to go back. I have Comcast and I can go back and look at it again. But talking about the public health perspective, you have to remember the fact that individuals who are on drugs are not able to contribute to society in a positive way, and that it can actually start as innocently as going to the doctor and the doctor prescribing you um, some kind of painkiller, Valium even, um, and other painkillers, and can ultimately graduate to using heroin. I have a number of friends who have been athletes and professional athletes, as a matter of fact, who after injuries and went to the doctor and they received surgery, and then after that, to recover, they were provided with painkillers, um, morphine even, heavily. My wife has had situations where she has had to take that. But one of the problems with these painkillers that you have to be very careful for is that they will uh, allow your body to get to the point that you'll need more painkillers to kill the pain. In other words, you can become an addict and addicted to painkillers. And painkillers then don't become enough. People start writing phony prescriptions, start asking for extra pills. My wife was taking, I forgot, some medication. I've forgotten what it was. It wasn't ibuprofen. It might have been, but it was a high dosage of it for pain. And she was actually approached by someone that we know that found out she was taking this medication, to tell her, and this is what they told her. They said, do you know you can sell each of those pills for about $100 or more? And she had 30 pills the doctor would give her. But that's illegal. You can go to jail. But that actually does happen. And people uh, will buy those painkillers. And individuals will commit crimes to get those painkillers. And then they start going to oxycodone, and they find other opioids that they begin taking, including heroin, and they're addicted and become addicts. And so the abuse of painkillers is one of the starting points that you should be aware of. And then what happens is people commit criminal acts like writing phony prescriptions, going to drugstores, faking doctors' signatures to get medications, taking people's medication. Have you uh, ever known or been told that when you throw out your prescription bottles, that you should take your information off, those plastic bottles like this one right here? I have a prescription that I need to get filled, and when I get rid of it, I'm going to tear off the label, tear it up, and throw it away. Because what will happen is that people will get out of the garbage can your prescriptions, and even though this one says no more prescriptions can be filled without the doctor's consent, they will do things to utilize that information, and it is really, really, really serious. Also, you should be aware that there is a high level of addiction that uh, takes place in the medical profession. Are you aware of that? And the reason being is because doctors, nurses, medical assistants, um, all have access to these drugs. And there are times when they will even be guilty of um, stealing them from the hospital, from the drugstore. Um, and, you know, I know of an individual who worked for Walgreens, for example, who worked um, uh, in the drug uh, department, and they were caught stealing extra pills because, you know, there's a high volume. They count them, and that actually it's the pharmacist who distributes them, and the assistant just passes them out. But they have the ability to get to some of them, and also there have been times when individuals don't pick up their prescriptions early enough, and then one of the workers get access, and what they will do is they will take those pills and they will sell those pills or either use them for themselves. So it is a very serious health issue. And so because I labeled from the beginning drug issue as contributing to crime because people commit crimes to support their drug habits, we have been placed with what we call an epidemic. And when you look at this video, particularly Chasing the Dragon, um, you will discover seriously how drug-related criminal behavior creates a public health issue. People are overdosing. We've talked about during in the past weeks about how we have Narcan, also another name is Noxalone, to arrest the drug habit. And then I shared with you um, this book right here that I encouraged you to get, From Dope to Hope. Which is a very detailed story of one individual who I met personally at Rasmussen campus a few years ago, who came out. And so as a result of this, we are faced in law enforcement with beginning to recognize that we need more treatment and recovery services to deal with persons who are addicted. And that one of the things is that, as I said, you can lock a person up, you can give them a long sentence, you can let them out, and they're going to go back to doing the same thing. Or, in the alternative, a long prison sentence does not cut off their access to drugs. You know that already, because there are many ways that the individuals who are incarcerated are able to gain access to drugs. And so it is very important, though, that we, as as a society and country, begin to understand that if we don't have effective um, treatment and recovery options, we're going to run into problems because the jails are going to continue to be packed, especially people, especially during a situation like now with this pandemic that we have here, with people already being depressed, being told that they can't do certain things. And the more things that you tell a person they can't do, you subject those individuals to alter their lifestyles, and some people can't handle it. Are you aware of the fact that there have been individuals who work in the medical profession who have been so overworked because of this pandemic? And I'm not getting off track, because what I'm saying is that the individuals find themselves dealing with individuals who reach out for opioids and all kinds of drugs to escape the um, problem that of facing uh, COVID-19 or the coronavirus. And because our frontline and workers, nurses, doctors, MAs, medical assistants, are overworked, that we find ourselves in situations where there's now an increase of suicide that's taking place among those individuals for a number of reasons, because now these people are beginning to see things different. Even though they're professionally trained to deal with crisis, uh, this is a crisis like we've never seen before. So compound that with what I'm talking about with the opioid crisis, and um, it's like ultra disastrous, very, very, very serious. Even individuals who are law enforcement are exposed to this. There is a high level of suicide among law enforcement officers at the present time, because of what is taking place. But also, there are instances where law enforcement officers are finding themselves to make some extra money uh, selling drugs and making drugs available to individuals after they've confiscated them as well. And then, not to mention the fact that you and I both know that a hospital is not a good place to go to these days because of COVID-19. And so, put that together with what I said earlier, that the individuals go to the doctor, they receive prescriptions for treatment, and then they're put shelter in place, stay in, and spending time in isolation sometimes, particularly if there's the COVID-19 present, and those individuals will succumb to their environment. So it is a difficult time. And so what is happening, good people, is that we in law enforcement, and this didn't exist as much when I was a police officer, but we're learning now. And when I've provided you with an example, which you can refer to, um, of the law, I believe it's 2380, the Illinois statute dealing with deflection, as deflection being an alternate method of how to deal with individuals, so that when individuals come into police departments with drugs and drug paraphernalia on them, they are not arrested, but instead they are directed to drug recovery programs. This is in Illinois. And in fact, looking at the next paragraph, there is an example here that talks about in 2015, the chief of police in Massachusetts, the Gloucester Police Department was disturbed by the opioid that he saw that was taking place, and he came up with um, on June 1st, 2015, the Angel program was launched. You might want to research that more and consider that as a possibility for something that can help you in terms of completing your written assignment as well. And so um, um, people need help for opioid addiction. And as it says, we're invited to contact or go to the department which connected them directly to treatment services. And why? Because now police officers are learning that the old-fashioned way of just locking up people, the war on drugs thing, is just not cutting it. It's going back to what I said before early on in this course, that is that this is a health issue. And so today, you see that law enforcement is um, moving into that direction. And so anyway, it says that those requesting help through the program are not charged with criminal offenses, even if they're in possession of drugs or drug paraphernalia, just like the law that I provided you. And so uh, the key thing is to treat individuals from a public health perspective. And so this is just one example, but be aware of the fact that the whole thing that I've said from day one is that my position, and I'm very happy to hear um, um, the president-elect Joe Biden have said um, in his statements that it is his desire that we change the criminal justice system more toward rehabilitation. And that is a signal that pleases me because of the fact that it tells me that we have to learn how to rehabilitate over incarcerate. Yes, people are going to be locked up because even while you're going through the processes of withdrawing from these drugs, most individuals are so addicted that it is not easy for them to be able to take these drugs and then just go back to where they came from. Because 9 times out of 10, uh, we we know this, that they go back to the area where they got hooked in the first place. It's just like you clean a person up and then you get them going, and then they go back into circumstances and situations that they're exposed to that set them back. And I'm going to tell you something, good people. The second time that a person goes into a situation after they've been treated is worse than the first. I think we all know and have witnessed this happening. Think about this. There are people in our families. Uh, there are people in our churches. There are people in our schools. And you will discover that this epidemic has reached such a proportion. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and she's in middle school. And that there have been instances in her school, and we're in a suburban community. We're in a very good school district where they've dealt with that. Of course, they're not dealing with it now because of the fact that people are at home taking their classes. But just think about uh, the fact that, I know of a situation where a person who was a medical assisting student at the Romeoville campus, and they learned about the drugs and the effects on the body, and Next thing I knew, the person dropped out of school and is now, at the present time, even with this pandemic going on, attending parties. And at those parties, they're smoking marijuana, popping pills, and shooting up. And so it's a serious problem. As I said earlier, compare that to the serious problem that we face right now in dealing with the pandemic, where there's no hospital beds in many areas where people live. Think about that. Think about that. Listening to this, the number one killer in America now is no longer, in health uh, uh, side, is no longer heart attacks or high blood pressure. It's been replaced by COVID-19. So what I'm saying to you is that imagine that situation being compounded by opioid addiction, and a person is an opioid addict and then gets COVID-19. That's very, very disastrous. And so my point being is this: it behooves us to begin to recognize that we need to not just look at this from a perspective of locking people up and throwing away the key, but we need to treat people for those issues the same way as we treat people with other health issues such as colds, flu, or you just name it. And that's how we need to deal with opioid addiction. And so those of you who are going into law enforcement, recognize, so now I've already talked a couple of times and mentioned the Illinois statute. Do you remember, or do you still have that information that I provided to you? Do you have that? Do you know what I'm talking about? The statute number is, give me a second. I think it's 23. I think it's 2380, but let me double check it. I'll tell you in a minute. Give me a minute. Um, it is, give me a minute while I go to it. I think it's on the next page. Maybe it's on the third page. $30.23. Senate Bill 3023 of Illinois. You remember that? Okay, that's what I'm talking about. That's that's something that you can look at and consider, and then do some research on it as well. But that is a response to what I'm talking about this week, the public health perspective that law enforcement officers. It is also a program similar to this Angel program, that 215. So this one was in 2015. The program I'm talking about was in 2000, no, 2019, I believe it was, or 2018. It was one or the other. And hopefully other jurisdictions are catching on to that. So, so I've given you some alternate ways of dealing with this, treating people. And so again, so now I want to move down to chasing the dragon. And it talks about some of the things I just talked about. Well, have you had a chance to Or have you looked at that video? Have you looked at it? Oh, okay. No, not the short one. No, not that short one. I'm talking about, it's an hour-long video, the one that we have in our module this week. Have you seen that one? Okay. Uh, you said you did watch. Let me see. Oh, that's the one I'm talking about. That's this one right here. We have the link right here. So I recommend, and then I also ask a question in the discussion forum about it, because before they changed this class, it was part of the discussion assignment, but we changed that. Um, it was part of the written assignment rather, um, before week 5, before they revised the course. So if there's anyone in here who took this course before, they know what I'm talking about. And it's called Chasing the Dragon, The Life of an Opioid Addict. And so all you have to do is click on this, and I'm just going to show you what it's like because it doesn't play very well back in the recording. Chasing the Dragon, The Life of an Opioid Addict. And you can just click on that, and it's a 47-minute video. And so anyway, it goes through and it shows you what happens to individuals, what the life of an opioid addict is about. And it talks about the fact that individuals um, seek to have treatment to try to deal with this issue. Uh, it is devastating. Please take the time to look at it. It will help you with your written assignment. And it is something that I've shared with students outside of this class who I sent them copies of the link because it's available on YouTube. And I recommend people take a look at this. But in this, you begin to see the damage that opioids can do. You'll see people who actually OD. You'll see people who talk about the fact that they came from very nice communities. And, so take the time to look at that. Dealing with these questions. And look what it says. It says, no one starts using painkillers or heroin with the intent of becoming an addict. I talked about that. Um, and then spending the rest of their life fighting or suffering pain withdrawal. That's what I just talked about a few minutes ago. And then it says, while purchasing and selling heroin is illegal, it is important to remember that the human aspect of this addiction. Individuals commit crimes, um, tears families apart. People steal from their own mother, um, capable of burglary and especially prostitution. I had a family member who was caught in that before they recovered. Uh, and I actually lost one of my sisters uh, who overdosed on cocaine, but I had another one who disappeared to Georgia. And last time we heard from her in 1994, she just disappeared, but she was going from um, all kinds of illegal activity, including prostitution, and it was bad. So we don't know what happened. We know what happened. We just don't know when it happened. And so I invite you to watch this video, Chasing the Dragon. Um, Thank you. So I have a personal perspective on this, and I think that as a individual who's going to go into law enforcement, that people should watch this video and learn about the effects that it has and how it can innocently start with painkillers. And then as you watch it, there are some questions to consider. What are the correlation between prescription drugs and opioid addiction? That answer is given in the video. There is a strong correlation between prescription drugs and opioid addiction. I've kind of touched on that a little bit. What are the ways people in the film got hooked? You'll find some things that will shock you, maybe. And some things may not shock you, but these are just ways in which law enforcement, last week's the video you're talking about is where law enforcement talked about it. This video is more designed towards the life of a person who was an opioid addict, kind of like on the same line as this book, From Dope to Hope. How did you learn how fast someone could become addicted, just like that. And it's like, you ever heard the saying, a monkey on the back? Have you ever heard that saying, a monkey on your back? Yeah, what that literally means is that you're stuck with it. And the only way you're going, and these people, many of them have gone to jail, but guess where they ended up? The morgue. And I'm talking about from all age levels. You're going to discover that. They're going to describe routine once opioid addiction is set in, and you're going to see some things. The main reasons users switch from prescription painkillers to using heroin, as I said before, they begin to move because the painkillers, after a while, the body just is immune. It doesn't affect them, and you have to get a stronger dosage, and then you immediately reach the point where nothing satisfies you but heroin and other opioids, and then you find yourself in situations where you increase the use of that, and your body can't take it, and you OD, and that's what has happened. And then they talk about the health consequences discussed by the individuals in that video. I highly, 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 highly recommend you take the time to look at that Chasing the Dragon. It is life-altering, and I asked the question in the discussion forum, after seeing this video, what do you think? And then see what people's views are on it. But law enforcement, this was produced by the Federal Bureau of Investigation as a video. So take a look at that. Then you have these indicators. This is a quiz you can take for yourself. Look at these. Of course, you do this after your research, and then put your answers in, and then next. And it helps you to get answers to the questions. So any questions about the topic that we're talking about today, criminal activity and the public health perspective? Any questions? Okay, and like I said again, you'll note that from week 5, we talked about, week 4, I'm sorry, we talked about law enforcement perspective, and that's when you saw that other video that you're talking about, where law enforcement talks about how much of their work is involved with it. And so the whole point in a nutshell is that we are at a crossroads, and we recognize that we have to stop the bleeding. And the only way we're going to stop the bleeding is with more treatment. And you know what? I hate to say this, that unfortunately the budgetary crisis for many states, because the federal government hasn't contributed enough to, they're so busy writing laws that they're not dealing with the things that cause this. Recidivism will continue, and our public health crisis will continue until we deal with treatment of these individuals. And that's going to be something that you're going to learn. The professionals who are in the health area, our nurses, medical assistants, and all those types of doctors are going to be very important in helping us fight crime, because of the fact that the reason why the crime is because of the drug addiction. So that's what I wanted to say. All right, so now I want to take a few minutes. I'm going to give you a key phrase, but I want to talk to you about week number 6. And I'm not going to talk about the topic so much. I'm just going to talk about the assignments. So your discussion assignment for week 6 is going to deal with methadone clinics. And as you may or may not know, methadone is one of the tools that utilize to try to help people with opioid addiction. I'm not a big fan of it because it's like trading off one drug for another drug. And so methadone clinics are important in the life of individuals who are addicted. But if a person does not, and the methadone is an alternative to going through withdrawals. As you will discover, the withdrawals are very, very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult. And people always talk about losing weight, that, and yours truly is in dealing with that right now. When I think I saw something I'm going to say. Never understood why methadone is legal, because it's like, well, the reason why it is legal, Aaliyah, is because of the fact that methadone is a substance that will allow a person to function normally in life, and not necessarily depend on committing crimes. That's why it's legal. But, well, it's just like, how do we treat illnesses in the first place? With medication, right? And methadone is a medication. The thing is that I don't like about it is because it's a delay to recovery. Methadone does not help you in the path to recovery. It just allows you to maintain your lifestyle or pick up a lifestyle. But it is the only way that you're truly going to really find it is if you go through the withdrawal symptoms. What I was saying about losing weight is that, my doctor told me, she says, Mr. Richard, she says, you're 70 years old, you need to lose 20 or 30 pounds. So when I get through with this session tonight, if I could show you to my left, there's a treadmill over there waiting for me, and I'll be on that treadmill. And then I'm going to lose in 6 months those pounds because I want to save my life. Well, it's the same thing that I'm talking about when it comes to dealing with withdrawal from drugs. It's tough. The temptations for me to eat certain things and want to snack and things like that. The same temptations come upon people who are dealing with the drug issue and trying to get that monkey off their back. And so methadone is something that deals with it. So you're going to deal with the pros and cons of distributing methadones for your first post. Argue one side of the argument whether methadone clinics are appropriate for overcoming. And actually, that is a misnomer. Overcoming, it doesn't help you to overcome it. It helps you to survive with the addiction. And then, dealing with the support that goes with it. And then your reply post is deal with a contrary position. So, but you'll see, and I'm going to talk about that more in detail during the lecture next week. But you'll note that your initial post, of course, is going to be due again on Tuesday, and then your reply post will be due Friday from week 6. So then your written assignment is diversion, treatment, and rehabilitation strategies. So once again, and the final time, you're going to use Dave's life circumstances. And you're going to look at it from the perspective of how law, mental health, and corrections have worked. Each week you've been dealing with that. But for this assignment, you're going to summarize the type of treatment programs available for addiction treatment. You already know one. Explain what types of treatment program you'd recommend for Dave. Locate a current example for each strategy below. The diversion strategy, the treatment strategy, rehabilitation strategy. This information you will find from reading the appropriate chapters that I will be sending to you, your modules on Sunday, as I usually do for week 6. You'll have that. Determine whether Dave would benefit from each of the current examples: diversion strategy, treatment strategy, rehabilitation strategy. You already know the one that I favor. So, do you know which one I favor? Yep, yep. Every time, every time, every time, every time, because it gives you a new life. Identify any additional resources that they might need, and then provide at least one credible source. And then the same thing, 2 to 3 page paper. The rubric follows along the same thing, and it tells you what to do in terms of this. Okay, treatment programs. All right, locate a current example of a diversion strategy, and thorough explanation on how the strategy will treat addiction and reduce recidivism. And then example of a treatment strategy, and then a current example of rehabilitation strategy. So you're going to have to research and come up with each of those 3, and it's there. And then finally, exemplary determination of whether Dave would benefit from each of the current examples, whether he would, which one. He discuss how he might, from the diversion strategy, treatment strategy, and then the rehabilitation strategy, with details, and make sure you have credible sources to support your position. Remember that, as I said before, mental health and drug addiction also go hand in hand, as well, as we're dealing with that. So think about it. When a person has COVID to deal with, they have the mental health, and they have the addiction issue. That's a tough thing, and there are many people facing that right now as we speak. Then credible sources and so forth. Okay, so that's what, and I'm going to talk about this too next week again, but I'm just giving you a heads up on what to expect for week 6, since the lecture is not until Wednesday. I wanted to try to move it up, but it wouldn't work out because I have 2 other lectures that I have to do on Monday and Tuesday. And then your final exam. Again, your final exam. And how do you best prepare for this? By looking at the PowerPoints. Looking at the PowerPoints and reviewing what you have learned in the PowerPoints. Your questions, I can tell you, that are going to be spread out similar to many of the questions that you've had on your quizzes. So there's a clue for you right there. If you do well on your quizzes, you probably will do well on this, except this is a longer time period. I think your quizzes are 30 minutes. This is double the time. So you can imagine how many questions it's going to be there. And then your live classroom lecture. Any questions about week 6 assignments? Okay. And like I said again, I will do a lecture, of course, on Wednesday for that. And I do encourage those of you who are not here to try to make that lecture, because I'm going to try to get it converted as fast as possible, but it's not up to me how fast that the system gives it to me, so that I can make sure that you guys have it. And so that's it. And it takes me back to dealing with this issue right here that we're faced with, the public health perspective. And so I want to tell you about a key word that I want to give you, and it is very, 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 very serious, and it's about the topic that we dealt with today: public health. That's it. Give me that, because that's what we're talking about today, involving the perspective of drug addiction, public health. Okay, well, I'm going to terminate at this time. Have a good week. Stay safe. And then if you need me, you know how to reach out to me. And thank you again for coming out, Aaliyah. And I'm going to say good night to you and to everyone. Okay, thank you.